Today was a lot of kind of repetition of what we've been doing the last couple days. So mostly sanding, just relearning or working on that technique of not sanding too much, but getting it off enough that it's really nice and flat, but without totally removing your texture or leaving stripes in the drywall. So that's just some finesse. It takes practice.
Okay, so anything you had to relearn?
I wouldn't say relearn, just kind of pay real close attention to how level everything is, to your measurements and everything that you're cutting and such things like that, you know. The Z metal, that's a huge deal. So, but that was talked about in the last video, so.
There wasn't any surprises today, but I just will caution everyone, make sure you vacuum, make sure you wipe down your walls, use the sponge, use a wet cloth, but get the dust under control before you start taping. That's really, really big, and you will wish you did it if you don't. So make sure, get everything as clean as possible before you start taping and plasticking. If you get your plastic covered in dust, it's going to be a mess. The tape's not going to stick to it. The paint's going to go under it. You're going to get paint on your windows, and you're going to spend time scraping them. So just take the time to really deep clean your unit. And really, after this, everything that we do is going to be kind of cleaner work anyways. So this house should be getting cleaner and cleaner as we head toward the finish line. The mistakes were from when we were doing the texturing. So we had a little too heavy, and we didn't do a final pass with the texture when it was drying. I think that would have given us a chance to kind of pat it down either with a sponge or with the trowel and just get those high spots smoothed out without having to sand as much as we did today. So that would have saved a lot of mess and quite a bit of effort. Just
check your Z metal.
Check your Z metal. Measure twice, measure 7 times. And then make sure to, on your, when you're doing the caulking, that you cut your tip and that you're running that tip kind of at the same angle to the wall. You don't want it pointing away from the wall, then you're going to be, all your caulking is going to be falling off. So you want to really press it into the wall, press it in the corner as you're going. Try not to use too much. When you're wiping it off with your finger, you don't want a giant glop. You don't want it like falling everywhere, or use a sponge or a wet cloth. But try to put a small bead at the beginning and then really press it in. You don't want to be wiping a ton of it off. No, just keep up the good work. We're almost there, so one foot in front of the other, and we'll get this build wrapped up. Good morning. So today's going to be really light on tools. What we want to do is just finish our texturing and make sure that it's knocked down any high areas or any boogers that we knock off the wall. Get that really kind of smoothed out and ready for painting. The other thing that we're going to need while we're doing that is a dust mask for the dust, and then your flashlight to see any areas that need to get hit a little more, and a pull sander for those hard to reach areas. As soon as we're done sanding, then we can go ahead and caulk the windows. So you'll just need your small caulking gun. You may need a knife to open the caulk or to get the shiplap out. The last thing we're finishing up today is our shiplap. So you'll need a pencil, your speed square, a measuring tape, and a saw to get those last few pieces up. And then part of the paint prep, you will need some masking tape and painter's plastic to get your windows and outlets covered up. So today we have a couple little touch-ups to do on our texturing. I just want to knock down any high spots and knife marks like this, and so I'll be getting the sandpaper after, but first I'm just going to go with my flashlight and just clean up anything that's sticking out, any boogers, as Corey calls them, and get those knocked down. And then we don't have to worry too much over here on this side. Dan reminded me, even though we do have some high spots, Dan reminded me we have cabinets going all the way around in an L shape here, and we're going to have some upper cabinets here. So we don't need to get too obsessive about getting this part of the house perfect, but let's make sure that side and these walls here are going to be very visible, probably like a dining area or something. So let's make sure and keep those really nice and perfect. And of course the ceiling. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to come back and sand a little bit, and then we're going to deep clean so that we can do caulking in all of the corners along the top, along the edges, along the windows, and try to see if we can get ready to prime by this afternoon. So now I'm just going to take the sandpaper. This is 220 grit, and I'm just going to take this mesh and run it over the ceiling really lightly to smooth it out and knock down any other high spots.
I'm actually cutting shiplap right now. I had to take it down and then level the Z metal out again. So now we're back at it again and making sure it's nice and level, and then trying to finish it up so we can go ahead and paint it by the end of the day.
Do you know where all the brooms went? So it's really important to keep your job site clean, but especially after the drywall and the mudding, there's a lot of debris on the floor. We knocked off a lot of little pieces from the walls and the ceiling, and then there's a ton of dust also from the sanding. So if you don't get this cleaned up and you start caulking your corners and your edges, all this dust is going to get stuck in it, and it's going to turn into like a dough that won't adhere. So we want to get this all cleaned out. Once we do a preliminary cleaning with the broom, we're going to vacuum with the shop vac. We're going to get in all the windowsills and all the crevices in here. And then we're also going to vacuum all along under the walls and as much as the floor as we can. This will help prep our floor for flooring, which we're going to do in the next couple days anyways. Another thing that we're going to do after it's clean is we're going to take the knife and scrape up any drywall that's really stuck on the floor that's creating any bumps. And that we're going to vacuum or sweep up as well.
It's going good, just taking my time with it, making sure everything's nice and straight so I don't have to take this down again, because that's double the task, double the work, and I'm pretty tired of doing double the work. So taking my time, double checking everything, and in the end it'll be worth it.
So it's really important to vacuum your windowsills, not just the windowsill itself where we're going to put the caulking and you can see all this debris is going to get stuck in it. So we really need to clean that. But actually inside the window over here, you can see that when you slide the window, you're going to get all this dirt and debris, mud, dust in your window track. And as a homeowner, you really don't want that. It's going to increase the wear and tear on your windows. It's going to affect the seal. So let's vacuum that up and clean it up before we get any further. Just gets it right out. Close it. And look at how dirty that is. yeah, so I vacuumed, I swept, and now I'm just wiping down some of the dust. There were some chunks of drywall on the door that I had to wipe off. Sometimes there's dust on the walls just from sanding that we don't want the paint to be mixing with. And then there's also, sometimes you'll find some high spots that you miss during sanding, and sometimes your sponge can be used just to like bring those down and soften them up a little bit. You also want to get all this drywall mud off the window, off the plastic part of the windowsill here, so we can see how it's on the plastic. So we're just going to clean that off and give it that nice professional finish before we put the caulking on there and paint them.
If we do the silicone, we can just take off like the back screw, bring down a little bit.
So just putting a little bit of caulking on all of the window seams right here where the drywall meets up to the plastic of the window frame. And we don't want that to dry out and crack. It would be a place where bugs or debris or weather can come through. So we're just gonna do a nice small bead here. You don't ever want to do too much. You can always go over it again and then just use your finger to press it into the corner. And try to get that smoothed out. And then you can kind of clean your finger off in the corner here. You can do a second pass. This is good to have a wet paper towel or a wet cloth too, or a sponge, just to make sure you don't have too much excess on the window frame itself. We're going to let that dry and then we'll be able to tape over it with our tape and plastic. Okay, so the windows are done and now we're just getting all the corners. So that includes wall corners like these ones. There's like 3 and this little corner for our 4th corner. And then also all the corners where the ceiling and the walls meet. So we're gonna go across here at the top. You really wanna push your bead into the corner as much as you can as you go so it doesn't end up falling off. Try to angle your tip so that it's, see how it's going the same direction as you're going to the wall, and that helps it stick. And you just kind of slide your finger along. There are tools to help you do this. I like to use my finger because then I can feel where there's not enough or too much and what areas I need to go back over. And then you just want to make sure you wipe up any excess so you don't have any ugly lines at the end where people can see, or finger marks. Yeah, so we're almost done with the caulking in here. All the windows are done and most of the corners are done. We have one corner left. I ran out of caulk, so I'm gonna go get another tube, but it's lunchtime. So we'll do that when we come back, and we will tape and plastic off everything and get ready to primer. All right, so now we're done with all the caulking on all the edges and corners and around the windows. We're going to tape some plastic up to protect the windows, and then we'll be ready to primer. We're also going to cover all the outlets with a little bit of tape to make sure we don't get paint on the wires so that we are able to see what color they are after. Yeah, so just kind of let it hang down, and then I'm just tucking this underneath to make sure it makes a good hold all the way. And I cut the plastic just a little bit too big, so you always are able to tuck it underneath. It's better to have a little bit too much than to not have enough.
Right now I'm caulking around all my seams and everything. I have a wet sponge, so I don't have to use my finger back and forth. I'd recommend that you use a sponge. It's a lot easier that way, just in case. But yeah, you just basically fill in the spot, go over it with the sponge, clean that excess off, and then make sure you have a bucket with you so you can clean that water off so it doesn't stain the siding. And yeah, that's pretty much the trick of it. I recommend, depending on the size of your seams, the kind of hole that you would like. For instance, I have a kind of wide gap up here, so I had to go with the bigger hole. And if you have excess like little holes like that, you can try to fill that in or just go back over it. You do want to make sure it's sealed from water damage.
Yeah,
You never know.
Because like if I buy a tiny home, right, like, and this isn't done right, I can have some leaks and stuff.
Always the problem is the roof and the caulking. Because as soon as it gets behind this siding, it's not, the water is pretty much going to destroy your house. All this is covered paint. I mean, it's kind of weather resistant, right? But if it gets behind there, it's going to get soaked. It's going to soak your plywood. And you might think you're fine, but after a couple years, you have rot. And you're going to need a new house. That's if it doesn't mess the integrity of your house, which it already will because you do have water damage inside the siding. So it's very important that you really get all your seams. If you see little pockets like that, make sure you cover them. And yeah, about it for caulking. We'll go get a bucket. All right.
So as always, we're gonna make sure we got our PPE on. So get your mask on since we'll be sanding, your safety glasses, and your hard hat.
So why go over it again? Same reasons, just to kind of smooth things out.
Yeah, Corey said it wasn't smooth enough and we need to knock it down just a little bit more. So we're gonna do one last run before we do a final wipe down, and then we're gonna paint it or prime it.
I'm just checking on my Shiplap, making everything lines up. We got a little off at the back here, which maybe not to the trained eye, you can't see it. You know, if you're not doing this type of work, you won't really see it. But for me, I can see even the 8th that we got off at. It's the 4th piece down, and that's where it really starts. Actually, 5th piece down actually. On that, pretty good. So I'm gonna maybe try to move the first two on the top up, but we're really trying to get moving today and finish her up. So, you know, it's not horrible, but it's definitely something you want to look out for. Kind of find the flow in it, or just kind of the enjoyment in it. Instead of doing something else, you're doing this. It's hard work, but it's like putting a puzzle together. So I guess I find that fun. I don't know. It's kind of up to the personality that you have, you know, whether to stay positive or negative. Not gonna budge. Come on, baby. As you can see, we got her as close as possible without taking the shiplap off. About maybe 1/16 to an 1/8 off now.
So we're just checking the texture for just smoothness and stuff. So we're going down, just taking a look and make sure it's not too rough. You do a once over with your sandpaper just to knock down any sharp edges and stuff. So we're just checking to make sure that that we're going to be good here before we apply paint. Feel that right there. There you go. And all you need to do is, if you run your hand over and you feel that it's a little rough, just take your sandpaper once over it, and it's usually typically good enough to take down the texture. Yeah, there you go. Because what happens with the sharp texture, and you put paint on it, you can't sand it. Two, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb.
Dan said there'd be cabinets on a lot of things.
Yeah, so that's also good practice.
Yes.
So I think we're pretty much ready for paint. It feels pretty good.
So finally we have gotten the approval to paint, so I'm pretty happy about that. Only took 5 or 6 days, but we're ready now. So I'm gonna just get a damp cloth and wipe down that last bit of dust on the sills, on the door, to make sure the paint adheres. And then JC is gonna spray this for me, so we'll get going.